one, bitch, I bet it well. Do the numbers, I said it well. I played the game and I'm still the same, and I never changed just to get a deal, bitch, I'm balling.
We were talking about Liver King, and we were segueing into the situation with like Singerman. A lot of people are talking about this whole situation with him getting a reduction in sentence that was practically half of what PJ Braun ended up receiving. And I had an interesting, engaging conversation with in RX yesterday, with John Romano and Greg Valentino and all that other stuff. And at the end of the day, it's like my personal thoughts are that in order for you to get a reduction in sentence in the short amount of time in which he has, without actually doing what's called programming in prison, i.e. taking programs to be able to get that reduction in sentence, there's only one answer. He's cooperating. So I'm interested to hear what your take is, because I was like, people want to defend him. I personally have had some interactions with him. I think he's a great guy. However, I don't condone the situation. I'm not an advocate of it. It's like I took it in the chin. I could have easily corroborated and gotten 0 years. However, I took it in the chin and did my 7.5 years and moved forward. What are your thoughts on this topic?
So I'm a lawyer, but I'm not an expert in criminal law. That's not my area of expertise. But I did have a lot of cases where there was a crossover with criminal law. Like I had a client that was going through criminal law procedure, and I was helping them on their other matters, like their civil case matters and their financial matters. So I do have a lot of secondhand knowledge of criminal law. What I've seen is that the government usually offers a sweet deal, or says they will, to anybody that will cooperate. And like the number one weapon that the government has against people and people's freedom, like citizens, is like turning people on each other. And if nobody ever turned on each other, then law enforcement would have a lot less to go on. There'd be a lot less prosecutions, and there'd be a lot less people in jail, and there'd be a lot more freedom. The problem is that law enforcement is so good at convincing people to give up their friends and and become a rat, if you want to call it, or cooperate, and with the promise of more freedom. And oftentimes it doesn't come through. Like oftentimes they'll say, "Oh, we'll get you a better deal," and you don't end up getting that much better of a deal. So like, in this case, if he cooperated and got a better deal, then that's what they were probably promising him all along. I thought what would probably happen is that he probably cooperated and he probably gave up all the information, on PJ, his previous friend and business partner, and Robert DiMaggio and anyone else involved, and with the hopes of getting some kind of more lenient sentence, and probably wouldn't get a more lenient sentence, meaning that he would have given up all his friends and cooperated for real no benefit to himself, thinking that he was going to get a benefit to himself. So that's all I have to say about it. Like, obviously that the government, that's what they really work on. They really work on people to give. They basically put a case together and then say, okay, we're going to nail you with this extreme sentence, because people don't realize how harsh the laws in the United States are. The United States is really not far off from China in a lot of ways. People think China is like this terrible communist fascist country where there's no freedom, and America's not far off. It's just disguised. It's just illusory in America until you actually experience the system. So like you get faced with that, and you get
believe you me, I have.
Yeah, you get faced with the reality of it, and then you're like, oh my God, I didn't realize this is what America was like and what it's about. And so now it completely changes my entire value system, and now I have to go into this self-preservation mode, or it's basically my life, or I have to give up my friend's life. And most people would choose to sacrifice other people instead of sacrifice themselves, and that's just by default human value, unless you kind of transcend that and have sort of a greater goal and a greater value and a greater purpose than yourself.
Yeah. And it's sad, but true, because the times in which I've been incarcerated, and just speaking to the individuals around me, they share a similar story. I mean, it's, some of them, were their best friends, 22 years, their brothers, their mothers. I've seen some cases where it was their significant other of 20 plus years, and it's just crazy because I mean, a perfect example is my case. I mean, the main cooperator in my case, what he ended up getting popped for, and what he got, and what he was why he deferred a sentence. Worst case scenario, you probably would have seen maybe a year or two in jail. Where it's like something like a person like myself at that point in time, the amount of money that I would have making would have either got him the best of attorneys. He probably would have gotten probation, if at all, and still been doing very well for himself. But you nailed it. I mean, the feds and the federal authority, officers, these federal authorities, like, they scared the shit out of you. I mean, I remember the first reverse proffer with me, and they're saying, it's like, oh, well, you're going to be doing 30 years. I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, what the fuck? For steroids, 30 years? And then my first attorney that I ended up firing confirmed it too. He was like, oh, well, yeah, your exposure is blah, blah, blah. And a person that's never committed a crime ever in his life would be like, shit, I'm going to see my son when he's 34 years old. And that's if I'm alive. Because my son was 3 at that time. And dude, what you go through, it's like depression. I mean, you name it, man. I went through it. And it's good for a person like you coming from that perspective. You haven't been a former attorney. You wouldn't fall for that. I mean, believe you me, like I was close. I was close to cooperating. However, like, my mom raised me well. She told me, it's like, you don't tattletale. And good thing is that I met some really strong, good-minded people in prison too that told me, it's like, Rich, that's worst case scenario. That's if you go to trial, man. It ain't gonna happen. Would you do 8 to 10 years? I was like, oh fuck yeah, I'll do 8 to 10 years. And if I keep my head up high, it's like I don't regret one day of it. And they're like, that's the worst case scenario. Ended up getting 7.5. So and with all the programming and all that stuff, I came out in 4.5 years. So that's not that bad. And I kept my head up high.
I have some perspective for people on what your situation and Singerman and PJ Braun's have in common, and numerous others in this industry. You guys got nailed, destroyed, hit with huge financial penalties, life ruined, put in prison for what? Like, what benefit to society was that? You didn't hurt anybody. Even a lot of people hate Aaron Singerman, but guess what? He didn't actually hurt anybody. That's not why he's in prison. Like, there is no victim here. Who's the victim? Who's the victim of you, PJ Singerman? It's not any citizen. It's not any of us. It's no one listening to this podcast. The only victim is the U.S. government and its monopoly over the medical and the supplement industry and related entities that have common interests. Like, it's a money thing. Like, you literally competed with the wrong people and you served prison time for it. No one was hurt. All of your customers, I'm sure, were very happy. All of them were getting quality products that were benefiting their lives, and they were getting knowledge and how to use the products safely. And look, you came in at this time when, like, it was right before TRT was really acceptable, socially. And now it's socially acceptable. It's kind of like back then. Okay, it was like really negative, a negative thing publicly, like, oh my God, it's supplying steroids. Now it's like every doctor's prescribing steroids. Like, it's a normal thing, and so you were doing people a good service. And Aaron Singerman's in prison because of a pro hormone. Geez, like, big deal. I mean, there's a lot worse things out there than pro hormones. No one ever got really injured from intelligent use of pro hormones. And the problem is the government is censoring all the information. So you censor the information, and then you tell people they can't have this, and then they end up trying to find it and use it and getting stuff hurt. If the information wasn't censored in the first place and people had knowledge to use things properly, it would be a non-issue. Like, that's, if we wanted to really fix the problem with society, we do that. We shouldn't be throwing people in prison and ruining productive people's lives. I mean, look at you and Aaron and PJ, very productive people that were building things for humans on planet Earth and progressing humanity forward and doing business like we all should be doing, contributing to society. And there's a lot of really evil people out there that deserve to be in prison that aren't in prison because the government isn't losing money because of their existence.
That's I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. When I was engaging in criminal activity like that, I did my due diligence. It's like I saw people like Tony Boss. I saw people like Victor Conte, doing a year in a day. Tony Boss doing a few years. I'm thinking to myself, it's like, yeah, they weren't remotely close to my size, but hey, you know what? Worst case scenario, I'll probably do 2 or 3 years. College educated, blah blah blah, U.S. citizen, a tax-paying citizen. It's like a society. I'm not going to get wrong. When I get sentenced to like these 8 years, I'm like, holy crap. And part of it is my lawyer said it best. It's like, if anyone watches Dave Chappelle, there's a skit in the Dave Chappelle show where it says where keeping it real goes wrong. So when I got, when I was there in sentencing, and she was like, hey, do you regret your decision, for engaging in criminal activity? That's when I was just Richard Rodriguez, brutally honest, and said, look, Your Honor, it's like you're portraying me like I'm this Pablo Escobar, like this Chapo. And when in actuality, I was only compounding products that made people feel good about themselves, alleviated, either fat, like obesity, cognitive behavioral issues, you name it. I've helped. And now you want to castrate me for that. Man, that was the worst thing I did, man. I should have just said, yes, I'm sorry, I did learn, because that's when she went off, man. She was like, you're conning me. You're conning the court. I was originally going to sentence you to this, but now, boom. When I heard, man, 90 months, I was like, holy shit. It's funny because I'm like, damn, I should have just lied. I should have just said, yeah, forgive me, Your Honor. It's like I did wrong. When in actuality, I didn't. And some people would say that's an accountability issue. I'm like, there's no, because I knew I was engaging in criminal activity. Fuck, it's like I wasn't gonna foresee that much.
Yeah, this is like a really sadistic, almost evil, like the pure devil situation to me, where you have a judge forcing you, like with that kind of pressure and that kind of penalty over your head, to give up all your values in favor of like a really evil system. So you have a system that's preventing people access to the medicine that can really help them. And now the system is going to punish people that are providing people with the medicine that can help people, and make them make a public statement that they're wrong. Like not even just serve the punishment, but now you have to come forward, unless you want to live the rest of your life in prison, you have to say like, I'm sorry, I was wrong, even though you're right, even though you're the good guy. And that, to me, that's just so sick. And when I've watched cases like this before and watched people have to apologize for doing the right thing, like I feel like it's Nazi Germany. I feel like America has become like a Nazi Germany. And the problem is you can't even like say that without getting censored. But the truth is, if people want to really understand what's happening, they need to study the history of what's happening, because a lot of things are repeating itself, and people don't have a reference point to be able to compare what's happening today. And so they don't realize where the dominoes fall and what kind of society that we're building by failing to object to the type of society that's being developed by mainstream monopolies and the government becoming a monopoly over every industry itself. Yeah. Yeah, political ranting. So you better give me off the political ranting, or I'll go on for hours, Richard. I was in the same. I'd say one more thing. Like I was warned against going against the system early on in my YouTube career, and I was like, I'm just a YouTuber, right? Nobody cares about me. Little did I know it was going to grow so fast because people wanted this kind of information, and it was otherwise censored. And then little did I know that how much attention and negativity I would get for it from the mainstream, and how much attacks and how much deplatforming and censorship would hit me and in all aspects of my life as a result. So like all of our problems and what's happened to you is much worse than anything that's happened to me. And Eric Singerman is much worse than happened to me, but I've certainly felt the pressure of the system, and the system has definitely cost me, more than anything else in my life by challenging the system. So I guess now I guess I have one question. Now, do you feel like you have to be censored at all and be careful what you say because of the past, and because do you have to be more careful?
Good question. I've learned the lesson learned is that I can't be so gullible into trusting people as I once was, because when the time comes and when push comes to shove, no matter it's like money, relationships can't buy loyalty. It's like, because a lot of people can't, when push comes to shove and they're throwing like potential life sentences, even though these motherfuckers are lying, they might bend. But also, I was such a proud American, bro. That's the reason why I admire your situation of not being an American. Dude, I was a proud American. It's like on my good years, paying almost $500,000 in taxes and being proud of it. All the impacts that I've done in the gym franchises, employments, and all that stuff. And dude, the way that they liquidated me, like shoot first, ask questions later. I mean, I was like, wow. Yeah, and then when I didn't want to cooperate, bring in my wife and threaten to like hit her with like a leadership role for money laundering, where she would have ran the risk of losing her CPA license that she worked years to get. It was just like, fuck, man. It's like they're forcing you to cooperate. They're like, and it's like, and I was like, and I'm trying to tell them, I was like, yeah, you know what? As a matter of fact, I will. What I will do is I'll give you a list of every single judge, every single cop, every single federal authority, and plus maybe even presidents and vice presidents that have ordered my products. And they looked at me like, fuck you, we don't want that list. And I was like, okay, but let's play ball. So I could say that I was kind of being a dick, but in actuality, you're like, damn, it's like, you're putting me in a very, very difficult situation. Fortunately, it's like, if it wasn't for the support that I had in prison, because my first lawyer was doing a horrible fucking job. My first lawyer that the first day that he met, he's like, talk. And I'm like, no, I wasn't raised that way. I wasn't bred that way. And if it wasn't for the people internally, I've said time and time again, in the time that I've been in the 5 years that I've been in prison, I've met more people in prison than I would love to do business with in my entire 37 years as a free man. Wow. And it's sad. It's sad because they share a very similar story. They have uncompromising loyalty. Their transparency is like insane, because in prison, if you're not a rat or a child molester or a rapist, it's like there's two things you protect with your life: your word and your respect. And the people that are out in the open, the papers are clean. That's how it is, dude. That's the reason why people were like, "Oh, it must have been hard," in prison. I'm like, you know what? The only thing that was hard for me in prison was lying to my son that I was in prison, and I was at work. Because if you're not a cooperator, if you're not a rapist, and you're not a child molester, it was a fucking frat house. It was a fucking frat house. I if you wanted women, you could have gotten women. If you wanted beer, every liquor, every possible contraband you can imagine, it was easily available. I only chose to to engage in contraband participation, specifically with a cell phone, because I wanted to be a father. I wanted to see my kid. I wanted a video chat with him because I did not want to have to explain to him. And due to the grace, thanks to the grace of God, I now see him. I hang out with him and all that stuff. And he just thought that his daddy was just at work. And I want to keep it that way until he gets to a certain age. And I tell him, the reality of this system, not to be so proud, to be conscious of who he interacts with, with the things in which he says. I mean, I was in a certain level of paranoia when I was in that industry, but like now, it could be as far as fucking jaywalking, dude. And I'm like, yeah, I'm paranoid.
I just remembered a story of a potential business partner of mine. We had a really honest conversation before going into business together. And he said, I always want to be really honest with you. So I'm going to tell you, like, if we get pinched, I'm going to rat on you. Like, to be honest, like I will give you up to save myself. So if you want to move forward in doing business with me, knowing that if I get pinched, then I'm ratting on you, then we can have an honest business relationship. Then if not, then don't do business with someone who's going to rat on you. Like, wow, like that's an experienced guy, to know, to say that. So you you can,
But that's a
these are the type of
level
conversations to really
respect,
have.
though. But that's a different level of respect, though. See, a person like that, I would respect, and I would just dot my I's and cross my T's and cover my ass, because the industry, the bodybuilding industry, and business in general, so many people just have like these ulterior motives. I mean, just be transparent. Just be transparent, because then I can at least know what to look for. I don't want to second guess, have to micromanage you, or have people, have lawyers looking after other lawyers. It's just not sustainable. So a person like that, I may not engage in business with. However, especially given my history now, but I'll definitely give him some respect, because he's letting you know, hey, worst case scenario, this is what's going to happen. And I wish there would be a lot more individuals like that in this industry that would just be transparent.
That sounds like an honest question that people, when they go into business, should say, what is our level of expect? I mean, people could change and they could lie about it, and they could change what they say about it later. They can say, oh, I would never rat. But, it's at least might as well ask the question. At least might as well have the conversation. I mean, the same thing like with a girlfriend, like have a relationship talk with a girlfriend. Say, like, are we exclusive? Are we committed? Or are you going to cheat on me someday? Like, is that part of the expectation? Same thing with a business partner. Like, do we have loyalty, or are you going to, like, tell my secrets someday? Right? These are good conversations to have.
Yeah. And it's sad though, because sometimes people don't do business anymore with a shake of a hand, or just wholeheartedly trusting one another. It's like they got to cover their ass to like contracts upon contracts upon contracts. When in actuality, there's so much money to go around, especially in this industry, man. It's like to screw someone, or to do certain things, that would benefit you immediately, but not sustainably. Because that's the thing. I mean, there's a saying in business: no one is smart enough to cover their bullshit forever. I mean, karma comes back to bite you in the ass. I'm an avid believer of energy, man. It's like a lot of the individuals that cooperated against me, I'm not going to name names because I can't name names. It's like karma came back. Karma came back real quick. and I was the individual that when I first read their names in the docket sheet, I mean, I was thinking the worst, man. I was thinking the worst, and everybody that followed me can tell, because I was the idiot to post a video on YouTube, like exposing some of them, and I had to take it down because they took my bond away, and they threatened to supersede me because they said that I was endangering the lives of federal informants. I had a video up literally for like about a few weeks, dude. When I got out on bond and I started seeing all the people that cooperated against me, I had a video. And I remember I didn't have the video for like probably like 2 or 3 days. It garnered about 50 some odd thousand views. And then I'm playing with my son in the park, and my lawyer calls me. He's like, "The fuck you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm in the park playing with my kid." He's like, "What the fuck you doing with that fucking video? Put that shit down." I got the federal prosecutor calling me, man, on my ass. Make a long story short, I took it down. 2 days later, I go to my case hearing. They revoke my bond. They were even threatening or superseding me, saying that I was endangering the lives of federal informants. And then that's when I never saw the light of day up until June 7th of last month.